The hush of a Manhattan summer night enveloped the towering penthouse that Jonas Blackwood called home. From its skyward vantage point, the city below looked like a cluster of glittering distant stars. During the day, the metropolis roared with life and ambition, feeding Jonas's relentless pursuit of power and prestige. At night, it pulsed with secrets, as if every scandal and hidden rendezvous was safe beneath the cloak of dark. Jonas Blackwood was a man who wore success like a second skin. Wherever he went, the air seemed to shimmer with possibility and tension, as if he could rearrange the world with a single snap of his fingers. Beneath his outward confidence, though, churned something uneasy, an undercurrent of restlessness. Like New York itself, Jonas was never content to remain still or satisfied. He pushed boundaries, in business and in his personal life, and eventually he pushed them too far. This is the story of how Jonas, in a moment of fiery recklessness, destroyed the delicate equilibrium of his marriage. It involves a woman he should never have touched, Mariana's own aunt, Cecilia King, and a betrayal so painful that, once revealed, no one could emerge unscathed. In exploring this tale, we uncover the darkest corners of human ambition, the depth of heartbreak, and the seeds of resilience that still can sprout from ruins. Jonas Blackwood's life began in an unremarkable corner of suburban California, where his father owned a small appliance repair shop and his mother was a nurse. From an early age, Jonas displayed an aptitude for problem-solving. He spent hours dismantling radios and toasters, dreaming of innovations that could transform mundane gadgets into tools of the future. By his teenage years, he'd already launched a modest online electronics repair service. The local press occasionally covered the wunderkind from Redwood Valley, though Jonas grew impatient with small-town fanfare. His true ambitions lay in big cities, among towering skyscrapers where power was bought and sold with the stroke of a pen. When he graduated high school, scholarships paved the way for him to attend an elite university on the East Coast. The creation of Blackwood Innovations seemed inevitable to those who knew Jonas. After earning his degree in electrical engineering and computer science, he turned his college project, an early cloud computing platform, into a startup that attracted venture capital. Within a decade, Jonas expanded his company through acquisitions, strategic partnerships, and ruthless negotiation. He developed a reputation as a brilliant but demanding leader. By his early 30s, Jonas had become a billionaire. He was lionized in business magazines, named Entrepreneur of the Year multiple times, and celebrated in society pages for his lavish galas and celebrity friendships. Despite his charismatic public image, Jonas was known privately for a driving need to conquer every challenge, never pausing to reflect on the emotional toll his relentlessness exacted. Jonas valued privacy for his own affairs, but understood the power of a polished public persona. He employed a dedicated team of PR strategists to bolster his philanthropic side. Their campaigns highlighted Jonas's donations to environmental causes, educational grants for underprivileged youth, and high-profile charity events that dazzled New York's elite. One carefully managed aspect of his public image was his marriage. The press portrayed it as the perfect union, a self-made tech titan wedded to a refined, intellectually gifted partner. This visage, charitable, loving, socially conscious, tied neatly into the brand of Jonas Blackwood as a visionary leader. But behind that curtain loomed a deep hunger that, once unchained, would devour everything in its path. Mariana King was the only daughter of Professor Gregory King, a celebrated historian at Cambridge University. Though her family held no extraordinary wealth, they carried an intellectual pedigree that commanded respect among academic circles. Mariana's mother was an accomplished violinist in a London-based orchestra, instilling in Mariana a love of the arts from a young age. Jonas encountered Mariana at a philanthropic conference focused on educational reforms. She was there to deliver a talk on improving literacy in marginalized communities. Jonas, initially unimpressed by the standard parade of polished experts, found himself captivated by her combination of poise and compassion. She spoke less from scripted policy points and more from a genuine desire to see children thrive. After her presentation, Jonas introduced himself. Their first conversation lasted nearly an hour, an unusually long time for the unstoppable CEO to linger with a stranger. He invited her to dinner that evening. Mariana agreed, curious to learn more about the man who, at age 34, was credited with revolutionizing multiple tech sectors. Jonas quickly recognized Mariana's moral core as a missing piece in his own life. She was gentle yet strong-willed, able to hold her ground in any intellectual debate. She found the best in people, a trait that sharply contrasted with Jonas's more cynical approach to business and power. Over months of dinners, social events, and long talks into the night, they uncovered layers of common ground, a passion for societal change, an appreciation for art and literature, and a shared dream of leaving the world better than they found it. Mariana introduced Jonas to classical music recitals and art galleries. In turn, Jonas opened her eyes to the possibilities of innovation, how technology could amplify philanthropic efforts. Their friends saw them as a power couple. She lent his empire a softer human face, while his resources and influence gave her humanitarian projects unprecedented scope. They married in a private ceremony at an English countryside estate. The event was intimate, close friends, family, and a handful of luminaries. Mariana wore a gown that reflected her refined taste. Jonas donned a bespoke suit that exuded wealth without ostentation. The day brimmed with hope and promise. In the first few years, the marriage seemed nearly idyllic. They supported each other's ambitions. Jonas funded libraries and scholarship programs in Mariana's name, while she managed the philanthropic arm of Blackwood Innovations. They hosted charity galas that raised millions, forging a joint reputation for altruism. Beneath the outward harmony, however, fault lines were beginning to form. Jonas's appetite for expansion left him restless. He was perpetually on the move, flying to Tokyo for a deal, returning for a shareholder meeting, then jetting to Berlin for a conference. Mariana, increasingly absorbed in charitable projects, tried to keep pace, but began to sense a creeping distance between them. Though they still held hands at public events and exchanged pleasantries about each other's day, the emotional intimacy that first bound them was eroding like a beach under constant pounding waves. Cecilia King was Mariana's maternal aunt, but the two women could not have been more different. Whereas Mariana exuded a quiet elegance, Cecilia was bold, impulsive, and larger than life. She was in her early 50s, but with impeccable grooming, expensive skincare, and a vibrant fashion sense, she easily passed for younger. She had spent much of her adult life traveling, living in Rome, Florence, and Paris, dabbling in art dealing and curating exclusive private collections for Europe's elite. A self-proclaimed free spirit, Cecilia saw rules as guidelines to be subverted or broken if they impeded her desires. She never stayed in one place longer than a few months, inevitably getting entangled in complicated affairs of the heart, then disappearing before the drama could crescendo into something unstoppable. Despite sharing blood, Cecilia had a tenuous relationship with Mariana's family. She adored Mariana's mother, her own sister, but despised the staid, academic environment that the family embodied. Over the years, she hovered at the periphery of family functions, often making scandalous, witty remarks that rattled conservative relatives. Mariana, for her part, both admired and feared her aunt's flamboyance. As a child, Mariana found Cecilia enchanting, a glamorous aunt who brought intriguing gifts from faraway places. Yet as Mariana matured, she realized that Cecilia carried a tumultuous aura. She noticed the hushed tones with which her parents sometimes discussed Aunt Cecilia's reckless escapades or questionable choices. Still, they never fully turned Cecilia away, perhaps out of familial obligation or a lingering hope that she might someday settle down. When Cecilia announced a trip to New York, Mariana offered her a place to stay. It was only polite, she reasoned, and it would give them a rare chance to reconnect. Little did Mariana know, opening her home to Cecilia would be the first step toward unimaginable heartbreak. Cecilia arrived in Manhattan 2 days before a grand charity gala that Mariana had spent months organizing. This event aimed to raise awareness and funds for Clean Waterfront, one of Blackwood Innovation's marquee environmental programs. Mariana, always gracious, encouraged Cecilia to attend as an honored guest. She even arranged for Cecilia to have an exquisite suite at the newly opened Blackwood Center, courtesy of Jonas's sprawling hospitality network. Jonas was not present to welcome Cecilia when she first arrived. He was in Chicago closing a multi-million-dollar acquisition. However, upon returning to the penthouse late that evening, he discovered Cecilia and Mariana sipping red wine at the dining table, engaged in animated conversation. Candlelight flickered across the polished marble floors, casting shadows on Cecilia's high cheekbones and highlighting her perfectly styled chestnut hair. "Jonas, finally!" Mariana exclaimed, her tone bright, though her eyes carried a subtle fatigue. "We were just talking about your big gala this weekend. I'm trying to convince Aunt Cecilia to stay a bit longer in New York. Isn't that wonderful?" Jonas nodded politely as he set down his suitcase. "Delighted to have you here," he said, offering Cecilia a handshake. When she rose to greet him, he noticed how her gaze lingered on his face a beat longer than expected, as though she were assessing the measure of him behind his polished demeanor. Their introductions were cordial enough, but Jonas's heart fluttered with an inexplicable tension. Here was a woman who exuded worldly charm and a subtle hint of danger, qualities that Jonas, a man prone to craving novelty, found both fascinating and unsettling. The next evening, Jonas and Mariana appeared at the charity gala as the perfect philanthropic power couple. Jonas was dashing in a tailored tuxedo. Mariana wore a midnight blue gown that accentuated her graceful figure. Photographers clamored for pictures, capturing every luminous detail. Under the vaulted glass ceiling of the Blackwood Center atrium, donors mingled over champagne, bidding on silent auction items whose proceeds would go to oceanic conservation. The entire event was a testament to Mariana's meticulous planning and Jonas's capacity to network with the upper echelon of global business and politics. Cecilia, too, commanded attention in a scarlet evening dress that contrasted sharply with the more subdued gowns worn by the other guests. She glided from conversation to conversation, weaving anecdotes about her international escapades. She complimented Jonas on the elegance of the evening, and he, in turn, found himself drawn to her easy confidence. Unbidden, a thought surfaced. This woman is more interesting than she appears, and more dangerous. During a brief lull, Mariana was called away to handle a donor's request. Jonas ended up beside Cecilia, near a lavish ice sculpture. She studied him, her lips curving into a sly smile. "Quite the show you put on," she said, swirling her champagne. "All for the fish in the sea?" Jonas smirked, sipping his own drink. "For the environment," he corrected. "It's not just a show. Mariana's deeply invested, and I also see the cause as important." Cecilia's laugh was light but pointed. "Well, I'm sure good deeds do wonders for your corporate image, too." Jonas stiffened. He was not used to anyone, especially not a member of Mariana's family, challenging his philanthropic sincerity, which he had, over time, come to believe in. "I like to think we do it because it's right," he responded. Cecilia shrugged. "Of course, I meant no offense. I find our family's pursuit of philanthropic ventures quite admirable." Although the conversation ended cordially, Jonas walked away feeling as if he'd been subtly tested. Cecilia's presence continued to hover at the edges of his awareness, like a question mark in the midst of a carefully crafted script. The affair did not ignite overnight. It was born from a series of almost accidental encounters that built a clandestine intimacy. Over the following weeks, Cecilia lingered in New York under the pretense of scouting art for a gallery in Florence. She frequently dropped by the penthouse, striking up conversations with Jonas about art markets, worldly travels, or the complexities of high-stakes business. Jonas was initially courteous but distant, keenly aware that he needed to maintain propriety. Yet each time he spoke with Cecilia, he found her unpredictable energy compelling. He began to sense a shared restlessness between them, although it manifested differently. Jonas channeled his disquiet into corporate expansions. Cecilia found release in jet-setting adventures and romantic entanglements. The shared adrenaline drew them together. In fleeting private moments, a chance meeting at the building gym, a shared elevator ride at odd hours, they grew bolder. A lingering glance here, a fleeting touch there. The secrecy added a dangerous thrill, stoking Jonas's curiosity. The tipping point came one chilly Thursday. Mariana was out of town, visiting her father, Professor Gregory King, who had taken ill. Jonas, citing an urgent business dinner with overseas investors, did not join her. In truth, no such dinner existed. Cecilia had sent him a message. "Come meet me at the Carrington Hotel lounge. I have something to discuss." That evening, Jonas arrived at the plush hotel bar, adrenaline surging. Cecilia perched on a velvet stool, swirling a glass of wine, her lips painted a provocative red. She wore a dark, form-fitting dress that showcased her ageless figure. Their conversation began innocuously enough, chatter about art auctions, tourism in Italy, but the tension was palpable. After 2 drinks, Cecilia casually suggested they continue the conversation in her suite, away from the watchful eyes of the lounge. Jonas hesitated, the moral weight of betrayal flickering inside him. But an intoxicating blend of lust and rebellion spurred him on. He followed her into the elevator, heart hammering with each ding of the ascending floors. When the suite door closed behind them, Jonas felt as though he'd crossed a threshold into an alternate reality. Lamplight glistened on gold accents, reflecting the city's nighttime glow. He set down his briefcase, and in a moment that would forever fracture his life, pressed Cecilia against the wall. Their kiss was urgent, fueled by repressed desire and the delirious excitement of transgression. The final sliver of Jonas's rational self warned him, "You cannot come back from this." He did it anyway, yielding to the hunger that had lain dormant for far too long. By the time dawn broke, they lay entangled in silk sheets, each painfully aware they had stepped onto a path from which there was no easy retreat. In the immediate aftermath, Jonas was racked with guilt. He told himself it was a one-time lapse in judgment, a fleeting moment that could be sealed away in memory. But he underestimated Cecilia's willingness to continue, and, deep down, his own eagerness to repeat their indiscretion. A pattern emerged. Jonas and Cecilia met in discreet locations, a boutique hotel in Midtown, the penthouse when Mariana was away, and even Jonas's corporate apartments intended for visiting executives. They communicated through burner phones and private messaging apps. Each rendezvous was a calculated risk. The fear of exposure only made it more thrilling. Jonas compensated for his treachery by lavishing attention on Mariana, giving her gifts, praising her philanthropic endeavors, and meticulously performing the role of a devoted husband. But the more he tried to placate her, the more tension simmered beneath the surface. He was losing himself in his double life, torn between the familiar comfort of his marriage and the illicit excitement Cecilia offered. Cecilia wielded a kind of dominance over Jonas. While he was powerful in the corporate realm, she commanded the realm of passion and intrigue. She found amusement in his guilt, occasionally teasing him. "You're free to walk away, darling, but we both know you won't." Jonas both resented and desired her, and, as weeks turned into months, he realized the affair was not a momentary lapse, but a parallel existence. He told himself that he still loved Mariana, but it was a love overshadowed by routine. With Cecilia, Jonas felt alive, as though he were tapping into some primal current of desire and ambition that thrived in the shadows. Little did he know that the gravity of those shadows would soon crush him under their weight. Mariana was no stranger to Jonas's busy schedule. She had accepted long ago that he often came home late or left for sudden business trips, but she also knew his tells, slight variations in tone, the way he avoided her gaze when he was concealing something. Initially, she dismissed her concerns as paranoia. Jonas had endured stressful periods before, particularly during major acquisitions, yet he had never withdrawn from her so emotionally. In stolen moments, she examined his eyes, hoping to find reassurance that the man she loved was still there, but she sensed a growing distance. When she confronted him lightly, an innocent question about his whereabouts, his answers were overly detailed or strangely evasive. A swirl of anxiety took hold in her gut, although part of her refused to believe Jonas would betray her. One Sunday morning, Mariana found receipts in Jonas's briefcase for restaurants and hotels she did not recognize. When she asked about them, Jonas claimed they were for entertaining international clients. Mariana saw no evidence that these clients existed in the corporate records. She tried checking with Jonas's personal assistant, Camilla Norwood, who was vague, citing confidential business matters. Troubled, Mariana confided in her close friend, Lucinda Morales, a journalist with a tenacious streak. Lucinda had known Mariana since their graduate school days in London. She was unimpressed by wealth and had a nose for deception. "I don't have proof, Lucy," Mariana insisted during a conversation at a quiet cafe. "But it feels like Jonas is slipping away from me. Sometimes I think there's another woman, but who would it be?" Lucinda pursed her lips, scribbling notes as if investigating a scandalous lead. "Trust your instincts, Mari. If something's off, it usually is. Keep your eyes open. If you want help, I can gather some information discreetly." Though Mariana initially resisted, the nagging suspicion grew unbearable. She decided to quietly observe Jonas's behavior, looking for patterns. Her heart pounded at the thought of discovering something unspeakable, yet she could not bury her doubts any longer. While Mariana grappled with suspicions in private, a tabloid photographer named Peter Hastings caught wind of potential scandal in the Blackwood Empire. Hastings specialized in exposing high-profile infidelities. He was unscrupulous, relentless, and had a knack for trailing celebrities unnoticed. Word on the street suggested Jonas Blackwood was seen entering upscale hotels late at night, sometimes in the company of a mysterious older woman. Hastings saw this as his ticket to the next big exclusive. He tailgated Jonas's car, staked out the Blackwood Innovations headquarters, and lurked around the Carrington Hotel, all while piecing together a mosaic of incriminating photographs. One rainy night, Hastings's patience paid off. He snapped a series of shots showing Jonas and Cecilia exiting a discreet side entrance of an exclusive private club. Although her face was partially obscured by a hood, the angle captured Jonas leaning in for a surreptitious kiss. The photographs weren't crystal clear, but they were damning enough for a tabloid's front page. Emboldened, Hastings spent the next week gathering more evidence. He acquired grainy security camera footage that placed Jonas and Cecilia at the same hotel on multiple occasions. In the world of tabloid reporting, this was gold. At this point, Hastings had two options: sell the photos to the highest bidder, or leverage the scandal to pressure Jonas into an exclusive interview. He knew Jonas, with his corporate might, had lawyers who could try to squash the story unless the story leaked to a swarm of outlets at once. But an exclusive scoop promising Jonas's confession of a secret affair would guarantee enormous publicity and fees. Thus began Hastings's cat-and-mouse game with the Blackwood Empire. He made cryptic calls to Jonas's office, left voicemails, and sent him an envelope of low-resolution prints to demonstrate that he was no mere crackpot. He wanted Jonas cornered into giving him what he needed: a high-profile, sensational story. Jonas, upon realizing someone was onto him, felt his carefully compartmentalized world tilting off its axis. He engaged a crisis management team to investigate leaks, shut down rumors, and quietly discredit Peter Hastings. But the fear that his double life was about to become public gnawed at him night and day. Although Jonas had assumed their affair was fueled by mutual desire, Cecilia had deeper motivations. She saw Jonas as a pathway to wealth and influence on a scale she had never before touched. Her adventures in Europe had been glamorous but transient. Money had always been fleeting, obtained from benefactors or fleeting love affairs, then spent on art and luxuries. When Cecilia realized just how much power Jonas wielded, she envisioned a partnership that could elevate her beyond the usual cycle of flirtation and flight. At first, she simply enjoyed toying with a billionaire who happened to be her niece's husband. But as Jonas struggled with the fallout of their affair, Cecilia sensed an opportunity. She realized Jonas might pay dearly to maintain her silence. One evening, when Jonas visited her upscale rented loft in Soho, Cecilia was particularly guarded. The lighting was low, the scent of her expensive perfume thick in the air. Jonas, tense over Hastings's threats, confided that he might soon face a public scandal. "Don't worry, darling," Cecilia said in her lilting tone. "Let the tabloids rummage around. We can handle it." Jonas's face was drawn. He looked older, haunted. "This could ruin my marriage, my reputation, everything. If Mariana finds out, it's over." Cecilia's eyes glimmered. "You don't have to let it go that far. We can manage the narrative, but only if we're aligned." She paused, trailing her fingertips along his shoulder. "Perhaps you can sweeten the pot, Jonas. See, I'm building a new art venture in Florence. Funding it will ensure my loyalty." Jonas pulled back, suspicion stinging him. "Funding? How much?" "I'm not unreasonable," Cecilia replied, letting the suggestion dangle. "Think of it as a business arrangement to secure mutual benefits." In that moment, Jonas realized he was in the grip of someone who was not merely a passionate fling, but a cunning manipulator. The hollowness in his chest deepened. Still, he was so entangled emotionally, physically, financially, that extracting himself felt impossible. He half considered complying, paying Cecilia off, but also dreaded the day she might come back for more. Amid Jonas's attempts to juggle crises, he made a pivotal mistake. He left his phone unattended in the penthouse library. Mariana, who was clearing away some paperwork, found it buzzing incessantly with messages from an unknown number. Normally, she respected her husband's privacy, but her suspicions had reached a breaking point. She unlocked the phone, only to find a series of intimate texts with Cecilia. Her blood turned cold. The messages ranged from flirtatious banter to explicit confirmations of their rendezvous. Not only was Jonas cheating, he was betraying her with her aunt. Mariana felt her entire body quake, a roiling sickness in her gut. The world around her seemed to tilt and blur, as though reality had cracked. When Jonas returned home that evening, Mariana was waiting in the living room, eyes red from crying. She held his phone in one hand, the incriminating texts displayed on the screen. Jonas froze at the threshold, a wave of horror passing over him. "How long, Jonas?" Her voice broke. "How long have you been sleeping with Cecilia?" Jonas struggled for words, each one feeling flimsy. "Mari, I never meant for this to happen. It just—" She laughed bitterly, tears glistening. "You never meant for this to happen, or you never meant for me to find out." In a desperate attempt, Jonas started to blame circumstances, stress, even Cecilia's seduction. But Mariana cut him off, her voice cracking with fury and heartbreak. "She's my family. I welcomed her here, and you—" She shook her head, unable to finish. Jonas reached out to her, but she recoiled. "Don't touch me," she spat, her hands trembling. "You took everything we built and threw it away. I can't even look at you right now." She stormed into their bedroom, locking the door. Jonas, collapsing on the couch, felt a crushing sense of finality. He imagined all the ways this could end: public humiliation, divorce, or worse. Little did he know the worst was yet to come. In the aftermath, Mariana refused to be under the same roof as Jonas. She moved into a luxury hotel downtown, using her personal funds. Jonas found himself alone in the penthouse, pacing the halls like a caged animal. Empty rooms and silent walls reminded him of what he had lost. He called Mariana repeatedly, leaving messages that went unanswered. He texted Cecilia, demanding she keep her distance. Yet in the midst of this turmoil, the scandal with the paparazzo, Peter Hastings, escalated. Threatening voicemails piled up. "Give me an exclusive interview, or I go public with everything." Jonas poured money into a top-notch crisis management firm. They tried to quash rumors by painting Hastings as an unreliable source. They teased potential lawsuits for invasion of privacy. Yet the tabloids kept sniffing, especially once rumors circulated that Jonas Blackwood was embroiled in an affair with someone close to his family. His corporate board grew jittery. Major investors wanted explanations. The philanthropic community, once charmed by Jonas's generosity, saw an unfolding moral drama that contradicted his carefully nurtured image. With each passing day, the risk of public exposure grew. Jonas's black-ringed eyes and fraying nerves told the story of a man on the verge of collapse. While Jonas battled his crisis, Mariana found her own anger boiling into a resolve. Encouraged by her friend Lucinda, she decided that the world deserved to know the truth. She had texts, dates, even overheard phone calls. The betrayal cut so deeply that Mariana felt she had no recourse but to go public, if only to reclaim some sense of agency and dignity. Lucinda, as a journalist, offered to handle the story with care, ensuring Mariana's narrative was told honestly and without tabloid sensationalism. They agreed on a TV interview where Mariana would speak guardedly but firmly about the betrayal, naming no sensational details beyond the core facts. Jonas, her husband, had an affair with her aunt. News of the planned interview reached Jonas's crisis team. They urged Jonas to negotiate with Mariana, to beg for a private settlement, anything to prevent a public spectacle. Jonas tried calling Mariana dozens of times, each attempt fruitless. Desperate, he even showed up unannounced at her hotel, but she refused to let him in. Mariana's interview aired on a reputable news channel. She appeared composed, dressed in a simple black blouse. Her voice quivered only slightly as she recounted how she discovered the affair, leaving out explicit details, but making it unmistakably clear who was involved. Social media erupted. The tabloids seized every sound bite. The philanthropic community felt betrayed by Jonas's duplicity, while corporate allies scrambled to distance themselves until the storm settled. Within hours, a Blackwood scandal trended worldwide. Memes, parodies, and outraged commentary flooded the internet. Jonas watched in horror from his penthouse, alone. No statement he released could stop the tidal wave of condemnation. He was, at least temporarily, a pariah. In the days following Mariana's interview, shareholders demanded an emergency board meeting. Jonas, gaunt and unshaven, stood before them as they questioned whether his personal controversies would harm the company's valuation. There were rumors of forced resignation, or at least a leave of absence. Jonas insisted he could weather the storm, but his pleas fell on skeptical ears. Meanwhile, Mariana, though validated, felt no real joy. She mourned the love she once shared with Jonas. Despite exposing him, she found the emotional cost unbearably high. She sought refuge in Lucinda's apartment, tearfully confessing her lingering confusion. She still remembered the moments when Jonas was gentle, brilliant, and full of promise. Cecilia had vanished in the immediate aftermath, but not without securing a substantial gift from Jonas. Fearing she might leak more incriminating details or spin the story for personal gain, Jonas had transferred a large sum to one of her offshore accounts. She promised to stay silent in exchange, implying she might find refuge in Europe until the media frenzy died down. Yet, even as she left, Cecilia made one final call to Jonas. "Don't think this is the end, darling. If I ever need more, well, we'll be in touch." The call ended with that ominous note, leaving Jonas feeling even more trapped by the consequences of his actions. Fate intervened in an unexpected way. Mariana decided she needed closure. She arranged to meet Jonas one final time at the penthouse to discuss the formalities of separation and potential divorce proceedings. Unbeknownst to her, Cecilia, who had delayed her departure, also sought Jonas on the same night to confirm he had no intention of backing out of their financial arrangement. Darkness had fallen over the city when Mariana arrived, her heart pounding as she stepped into the hushed elevator. The door to the penthouse swung open with a creak, revealing Jonas, disheveled, nursing a tumbler of whiskey. Before he could speak, Mariana launched into a measured but emotionally charged address. "I'm here to finalize things," she said, her voice trembling with residual anger. "I loved you more than words could say, Jonas. But you've turned our life into a spectacle. I can't do this anymore." Jonas set down his drink, meeting her eyes with desperation. "Mariana, I've ruined everything. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but at least let me try to make amends. I'll give you whatever you need." They were interrupted by the sharp click of heels echoing across the marble floor. Cecilia appeared from the hallway, dressed in a sleek designer coat. Mariana's eyes flared at the sight of her aunt. Cecilia stared back, arms folded. "Perfect. Both of you are here. Saves me the trouble of repeating myself." Mariana, trembling with barely contained fury, hissed, "How dare you show your face now?" Cecilia shrugged nonchalantly. "Don't be so dramatic, Mariana. I told Jonas I'd be leaving the city, but I needed a final word." The tension was suffocating. Jonas tried to stand between them, but Mariana waved him off. "We have nothing to discuss, Cecilia. You destroyed my marriage." Cecilia's eyes flashed. "And you think Jonas was an innocent lamb? Please, he's every bit as responsible as I am." Jonas pleaded for calm, the veins in his neck standing out. "Stop it, both of you. I can't take any more fighting. Cecilia, take your money. Mariana, I'll sign the divorce papers. Just, can we not do this in the middle of my home?" Cecilia let out a brittle laugh. "Oh, Jonas, you think it's that simple to pay me off and see me on my way? I've risked my reputation for you. And now you want me to vanish so you can salvage your image." Mariana spun to face Jonas, tears in her eyes. "You told me you gave her money. For what? To keep silent?" He stammered. I just wanted to protect you from more details, more pain." This was the only way. Cecilia's lips twisted in scorn. Protect her or protect yourself. In the charged moment that followed, everything that had been suppressed exploded in a maelstrom of accusations, insults and confessions. Cecilia brandished her phone, threatening to reveal additional evidence if Jonas tried to scapegoat her. Mariana broke down in sobs, her heartbreak raw as she screamed at Jonas for betraying her with her own flesh and blood. Jonas shouted back in desperation, insisting he was at fault, that he would do anything to fix what remained. Amid the shouting, Cecilia lunged toward Jonas, phone raised, threatening to record him confessing his wrongdoing. Mariana, her anger erupting, tried to intervene, demanding Cecilia stop provoking him. Jonas, caught in the middle, tried to wrest the phone from Cecilia's grip. A struggle ensued, clumsy and frantic. Cecilia, unsteady in her heels, staggered backward and reached out blindly. Her hand closed around a heavy crystal vase perched on a side table. She lifted it, perhaps to threaten or ward off Jonas. In that instant, Mariana lunged to pull Jonas away from Cecilia's swing. The vase came down with a sickening thud on Jonas's temple. Time seemed to slow. Jonas crumpled to the floor, the vase shattering, sending shards of crystal skittering across the marble. Blood trickled from his head, staining his shirt collar. Mariana screamed, dropping to her knees beside him. Cecilia stood frozen, still clutching a jagged piece of the vase's handle, her face twisted in shock and horror. Frantic, Mariana fumbled for her phone, calling 911. Her voice cracked with terror as she begged for an ambulance. Jonas's eyes fluttered, his breathing labored. Blood pooled on the marble, each second an eternity of dread. Paramedics arrived swiftly, administering first aid. They rushed Jonas to a nearby hospital, with Mariana seated at his side in the ambulance. Her tears soaked his shirt as she held his limp hand, whispering pleas for him to hold on. Cecilia followed in a separate car, stunned into silence. At the hospital, doctors fought to save Jonas's life. The injury to his temple had caused a severe hemorrhage, and within hours he slipped into a coma. Despite emergency surgery, the damage was too extensive. He never regained consciousness. Shortly before dawn, surrounded by the hum of medical equipment, Jonas Blackwood, billionaire titan of industry, was declared dead. The world reeled at the news of Jonas Blackwood's sudden death. Headlines lamented the downfall of a visionary, while also feasting on the salacious scandal that led to his demise. Blackwood Innovations saw a temporary crash in stock value. Within days, the board installed an interim CEO, emphasizing continuity to reassure shareholders. Cecilia King was arrested and charged with manslaughter. Her defense was that she acted in self-defense during a highly charged confrontation. The courts, inundated with publicity, recognized the complexity. Though she struck the fatal blow, the circumstances were fraught with mutual aggression. Eventually, she entered a plea deal, resulting in a reduced sentence. She would serve time, but less than the public outcry demanded. Mariana was left a widow, shattered by betrayal and grief. For weeks, she could barely function, her mind replaying the scene of Jonas collapsing to the floor. She left the city, finding refuge in her father's English home, where she grieved behind closed doors. Paparazzi tried to hound her, but she maintained strict privacy, emerging only to arrange Jonas's funeral. Hundreds attended the memorial service, business leaders, celebrities, politicians, employees who admired Jonas's drive. Mariana stood at the front, dignified yet heartbreakingly fragile. She placed a single white rose on Jonas's casket, murmuring a farewell only she could hear. "I hope you find the peace that eluded you in life." In time, Mariana found a tenuous path toward healing. She inherited Jonas's shares in Blackwood Innovations, but chose not to involve herself in corporate affairs. Instead, she focused on the philanthropic side: clean waterfront, environmental protections, and various educational grants. She channeled her pain into ensuring that Jonas's philanthropic legacies continued. The love she once felt for him, though marred by betrayal, also fueled her determination to preserve the best parts of his dream. Months turned into a year. Public fascination with the scandal ebbed, replaced by new headlines. Jonas's name entered that pantheon of tragic figures who rose quickly and fell even more swiftly, undone by personal demons they could not contain. Mariana, now an advocate for deeper transparency and ethics in philanthropy, moved into a quieter residence in upstate New York. She wrote a book titled When Trust Falls, reflecting on the illusions of power and the fragile nature of relationships. Part memoir, part cautionary tale, it resonated with those who had suffered betrayal or become entangled in the complexities of ambition. In her final chapter, Mariana wrote, "We often believe that love, wealth, or status can give us immunity from the storms of life, but we remain deeply vulnerable no matter how high we build our towers. Jonas taught me that betrayal can come from those we trust implicitly, and sometimes from parts of ourselves we never knew existed. Healing is never linear. It is messy, painful, and slow. Yet in that very struggle we find pieces of ourselves that can grow stronger, more compassionate, more awake to the fragile beauty of life." With those words, she sealed the lessons gleaned from a union that once promised a fairy tale ending, but concluded in heartbreak and tragedy. Shadows of splendor lingered in the public consciousness, a reminder that the line between grandeur and ruin is perilously thin, and that the cost of crossing it is often far greater than anyone can bear. In re-examining Jonas and Mariana's story through a deeper lens, it becomes evident that human frailties, ambition, lust, and vanity are not mere plot devices, but echoes of real emotional undercurrents many face in life. Jonas's tragedy is not just that he cheated, but that he chose to feed his restlessness rather than confront it, ignoring the love that could have grounded him. Cecilia's involvement reveals how unaddressed insecurities and unchecked desires can spiral into exploitation. Mariana's journey underscores the possibility of survival and rebuilding, even when the very foundation of one's life crumbles. This narrative stands as a testament to the power of choices, reminding us that one decision can initiate a chain reaction with devastating consequences. Yet it also illuminates that from the debris of betrayal, a seed of renewal can still take root, carrying forward the memory of what was lost in the hope of creating something more honest and lasting.